a practical journey of understanding. Introduction. Before we begin, I would like to invite you to put aside, for a moment, everything you think you already know about Buddhism. You don't need to memorize anything. You don't need to know Pali. You don't need to accept a belief simply because it appears in an ancient text. Instead, I would like you to do something much simpler. Look at your own life. Most of us want something quite ordinary. We want the things we dislike to decrease. We want the things we like to increase. We want to be happier. We want greater peace. We want our relationships to go well. We want to feel secure. And when something brings us happiness, we naturally want more of it. When something brings us pain, we naturally want it to stop. But there is a question that we don't always ask. And it is this: do the things I choose actually lead where I want to go? Something can feel good now, but create problems later. Something can be difficult now, but lead to something beneficial. And sometimes, something that looks attractive can quietly take us in a direction we never intended to go. So how do we tell the difference? That is where our journey begins, learning to look. The first 3 discourses we will explore come from the Majjhima Nikaya. They give us a way of approaching this entire investigation. The first is the Kuladhamma Samadana Sutta, MN 45. It examines different ways of taking something up and living according to it. Some bring difficulty now and difficulty later. Some bring pleasure now, but difficulty later. Some bring difficulty now, but benefit later. And some bring pleasure now and benefit later. So we are immediately invited to look beyond the present moment. Not simply, do I like this? But where does this lead? That is our first question. Then we come to the Mahadhamma Samadana Sutta, MN 46. This discourse takes the investigation further. It begins with something very familiar. People generally wish that what they dislike would decrease and what they like would increase. But the way we pursue what we like or avoid what we dislike can sometimes produce exactly the opposite of what we want. So we begin to examine our choices differently. We look not only at what happens immediately, we also look at what happens over time. We ask, what happens when I repeatedly choose this? That question will remain with us throughout the entire course. Then comes the Vimamsaka Sutta, MN 47. And now another question naturally arises. If we are going to investigate how to live wisely, how do we know what is worth following? The discourse describes investigation. It examines what can be observed. It considers conduct. It considers qualities of mind. It asks us to look carefully rather than simply accepting a claim without examination. So this becomes another foundation for our journey. Don't merely collect teachings. Investigate them. Listen, reflect, practice, observe, and see what becomes clear. From here, the journey begins. Once these 3 foundations are established, the rest of the course unfolds as a series of questions. We will not begin by asking you to understand a long list of Buddhist concepts. Instead, one question will lead naturally to another. First, why should I practice? Then, what dangers in life cannot simply be avoided? Then, how does reflection change the way I see my life? Then, what gives practice strength? And eventually, what conditions keep suffering going? What conditions help it diminish? We will explore the Kamakaranavaga, AN 2.1, and examine why beginning the path matters. Then the Bhaya Sutta, AN 3.62, where we encounter dangers that give urgency to practice. Then the Sukumala Sutta, AN 339, where reflection on aging, illness, and death changes the relationship with complacency. And the Tithana Sutta, AN 3.42, where confidence becomes visible through the way a person relates to good people, good teachings, and generosity. From there, we reach the Adhikaranavaga, AN 2.11 to 20. Here, an important distinction appears. There is the strength that comes from careful reflection, and there is the strength that comes from cultivation. Reflection helps us see. Cultivation helps us develop. So practice begins to move from simply understanding something intellectually toward repeatedly developing what is beneficial. Then we come to the Tanha Sutta, IN 10.6 Dikwa. Here the investigation becomes conditional. Instead of simply asking, why am I suffering? we begin asking, what is feeding this? What am I listening to? Who am I spending time with? How am I attending to experience? What happens to my awareness? What happens to my conduct? What happens to the hindrances? And how do these conditions support the continuation of craving? The discourse also describes a contrasting movement toward knowledge and liberation. So we begin to see that change does not happen randomly. Conditions matter. Then comes the Maggia Sutta on 9.3. Here we encounter another very human experience. Sometimes we know what we want to develop, but the mind does not simply cooperate. So instead of immediately blaming ourselves, we begin asking, what conditions support the development of the mind? Then the investigation becomes more personal. In MN5, the Anagana Sutta, we examine mental stains. Can I recognize what is actually happening within me? Can I see something unhelpful without immediately defending it? Can I acknowledge what is present without turning that recognition into self-condemnation? This is an important part of learning to practice. We have to become willing to see. From there, we investigate the conditions supporting the hindrances. We ask, how does anger arise? How does desire arise? How does confusion arise? What makes them grow? And just as importantly, what happens when the conditions supporting them are removed? You are not expected to master all of this. There will be unfamiliar words. There will be passages that take time to understand. There will be ideas that may initially seem abstract. That's perfectly fine. This is not a race to understand everything. The purpose of the journey is to gradually develop a different way of looking. So when something happens in your life, you can begin with very simple questions. What happened? What did I choose? What was the result? What was I feeling? What was happening in my mind? What conditions contributed to this? What kept it going? And what happened when I responded differently? One question to carry with you. If you remember only one question from this entire introduction, remember this. Where does this lead? When you speak, when you act, when you pursue something, when you become angry, when you want something, when you avoid something, when you pay attention to something, when you practice, pause for a moment and ask, where does this lead if I keep doing it? That simple question is where our journey begins. And gradually, the question becomes deeper. We begin asking, what conditions make suffering arise? And eventually, what conditions allow suffering to cease? That is the journey we are about to undertake, not a journey of collecting more beliefs, not a journey of memorizing more concepts, but a practical journey of learning to see, to understand, to practice, to observe, and, where appropriate, to let go. Then we arrive at MN2, the Sabbasava Sutta. This is one of the most practical parts of our journey. When something unhelpful arises, there is not always one answer. Sometimes we need to see it clearly. Sometimes we need restraint. Sometimes we need to use something appropriately. Sometimes we need to endure something. Sometimes we need to avoid a situation. Sometimes we need to actively remove an unhelpful thought. And sometimes we need to cultivate something beneficial. The question becomes, what is appropriate here? Then, in 368, we investigate three familiar patterns: attraction, aversion, and confusion. The discourse examines the conditions under which these arise and increase. It also describes conditions supporting their abandonment. This brings the investigation very close to everyday experience. Something happens. We notice what we are attracted to. We notice what we resist. We notice where we become confused. And we begin asking, what am I attending to? And how am I attending to it? Then we turn to the Metta Sutta. Here we explore metta, not simply as an emotion we are supposed to manufacture, but as part of a way of living. The discourse begins by describing a person who is capable, upright, gentle, content, restrained and prudent. Then it develops a mind of goodwill toward all beings. We therefore investigate something very practical. What happens when hostility is no longer being fed? And how can a mind of goodwill be cultivated? As the journey continues, the investigation becomes deeper. In MN44, the Kulavadala Sutta, we examine the five aggregates: body, feeling, perception, formations, consciousness, and we investigate the relationship between these experiences and clinging. Instead of simply saying, I need to let go, we begin asking, what exactly am I holding on to? Finally, we come to SN 22557, the Sattatthana Sutta. Here we learn a framework for investigating experience itself. What is this? What gives rise to it? What is its cessation? What leads to its cessation? What is attractive about it? What is dangerous about it? And what is the escape? The investigation then becomes broader still. Experience can be examined through elements, through sense bases, and through dependent arising,